very impressed with my friend from all the way from Sicily. So we're going to bring her on the screen in just one second, and there she is. So this is Natalia Ravida, and she is in beautiful Sicily that Bill and I, my cameraman, Martin Scorsese, appropriately, that we hope to visit soon. So welcome, Natalia.
Hi, Leanne. So wonderful. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm so excited to be sharing my olive oil experience with all your listeners.
Oh, cheers to you, my dear. It's wonderful. I said, for those who don't know me, I'm author. I've written about ladies who lunch in the Savor in Gotham book. Bill will show you that. So these were great women, I dare say, in every city who really supported the culture and through their philanthropy, many great works. They were called Ladies Who Lunch, people like Babe Paley or Jackie O and so on. But I'm also the author of the Hamptons and Long Island Homegrown Cookbook and the Art of the Garnish. And and I know Natalia because I work with the European Union and the Extra Virgin Olive Oil Commission because we wanted to educate people, particularly here in the U.S., about the benefit and quality of extra virgin olive oil. So she's going to tell you about this in a minute. But this is my Ravida's olive oil is like my go-to olive oil.
Thank you,
So
Luann.
yes, we just adore it. It makes everything taste better, obviously, and it's healthier for you. But if you can tell us just a little bit about how you came to run this successful empire. I know some people might say she's Italian, but I think I hear a British accent.
Well, first of all, thank you for calling it an empire. It's actually a very small business run by myself and one of my sisters. We're all sort of girls working together
I love that.
and trying to put our efforts. But it's true that we have gone very international with our tiny business. And that is because thanks to my father, we had a British upbringing, first in Kenya and later in sort of
Oh,
international schools in Italy, like the English school in Rome, where we all studied. So that's why I have a British accent,
I,
besides having worked
I
several years in London as a journalist before moving on to the olive oil business.
Was it a challenge for you to change out careers? Did you have to learn a lot, or did you know a lot about the olive oil business from your father and growing up?
Well, I really knew nothing about the olive oil business, believe it or not. But I knew one very important thing. I loved it. I loved using olive oil every day in very simple things, I've got just a couple of chopped tomatoes here I sprinkled a bit of oregano, and I would just put a tiny pinch of sea salt and our olive oil when I lived in Paris and then London, where, everything doesn't taste of anything, and suddenly all that food came to life.
Uh,
And as I carried sort of small bottles, at the time you could carry bottles on the plane, I used to always carry a bottle of freshly pressed olive oil with me wherever I live, and invite friends over for, the simple things that you do when you're in your 20s and 30s, like a bruschetta, pasta with olive oil. Very simple things. And everybody asked me, what is that? We've never tasted anything like that. But I said, well, that's nothing special. It's olive oil. And so from there, the idea of bottling it, we're talking about the late 80s when quality olive oils did not exist on the market. I mean, they were the
mm.
first ones appearing, from Tuscany. There were two or three brands of wine producers who started producing quality oils, but they were just like really very, very few.
Well, then how did
Uh,
people get it? Did they just go to their local growers and get a can of olive oil? How did it transition to?
Well, yes, in Italy, and especially in this, yeah, in the south of Italy, where the olive oil production is really everywhere. People usually go at harvest time. They go to olive presses and buy big tanks, like 50 liters, just the whole year's stock of olive oil. And they used to have good quality olive oil at home, but that was not the case abroad because the olive oils were sort of the supermarket brands, which, as you know,
Mm.
they're called extra virgins, but they're something completely different. I don't want to go into that, but of course, there's a huge difference. And you, Luan, Lian, who you have tasted with the Consortium, quality olive oils. You know,
Exactly. I
it's
mean,
two worlds
I'll
apart.
tell the viewers that, you know, we've always used good quality olive oil. I will say that. But when you taste, you know, the really special or from the consortium, and when I first saw you and some of the other representatives, almost like drinking it straight away, I thought, how could it be? But then when you taste it, it's so delicious and light. And even last year, the year before, I created a cocktail, and I will post that as part of this viewing so that the audience can see. It's so light, you can make a cocktail drink out of it.
Yes, I think you came with me in New York, well before everything locked us in at home. But when we went to Dante's, they also make cocktails with our extra virgin olive oil. It actually works deliciously. But basically, what happens is that, you know, industrial olive oils are made of all sorts of oils. They're cut. They come from all different parts of the world, and that's why they are so cheap. You know, they can cost what, $10, $12 a liter. But an estate bottled oil is actually produced with only with olives grown either on that farm or in that area, and that does make the difference because it's just like it's just a bit like wines. You know, do you remember when we had really bad quality
Right.
table wines, and now we have all these chateaus? You know, we have all these sort of estate bottled wines. The same thing is in olive oil, and you have learned yourself to taste olive oils. A good
Exactly.
quality olive oil will have either a mild, a medium, or an intense grassy nose. It will have a long peppery aftertaste that will develop in the back of your throat, and that is all the antioxidants of which quality olive oil is very rich of. That will be a beautiful, pleasant pepper as opposed to something that really scratches the back of your throat. And overall, as that is the case with Ravida, the finish is very clean. You know, you're tasting olive oil, which is a 99% fat, and it's not greasy on your lips or overall in your mouth. It has to leave a very light, fresh finish, a flavor of freshly mown hay, of grass, of sun-dried tomatoes, of artichokes. Then that depends on the variety of olives that are used in that specific olive oil.
I mean, I came at food and drink and so on because I'm a horticulturist and garden designer, and I know that the terroir plays a large role in this. So, a couple of things for the audience they might not know, but olive trees can live for like what, hundreds of years? And also, is it true that where you grow the olives can affect the taste of the olive oil?
It's just like wine. The terroir and the varieties is everything. So the same Biancolilla or Cerasuola grown where we are very close. We're just 80 meters, 80 to 110 meters above sea level, overlooking the Mediterranean Sea. So it's very hot, it's dry.
See, we
And
look back at Manhattan. This is the Bay. So I was going to say you have the beauty of the Mediterranean. So we have the beauty of the Atlantic Ocean. So
I know
it's
it's so
very
beautiful.
similar. Exactly.
I wish I could be there. You know, we always like to exchange places. But I
Exactly.
wanted to say the same varieties, if they're grown on a mountainous region, even within Sicily. We have a small farm in inner Sicily in the mountains where it's very beautiful. The oil there is very mild, is very delicate. So that's it's the same variety, but in a different land and different climate, just like wine, will give absolutely different results.
How long can an olive tree live? Like, it grows hundreds of years, or?
Yes, we have trees at the farm that we estimate could be over 600. It's just that we can't really go back before that. But the rootstocks are so huge. They almost like look like, you know, elephant feet,
Oh,
and
wow.
they seem to have been there forever. From that olive grove, we select the best 1,000 liters from our selection every year, from our production, excuse me, every year. And I've dedicated this bottle to my father. And this comes
Oh,
exclusively from the old olive grove. And, you know, it's a bit like old roses, plants. They seem to, the flavor in that olive oil is so intense, it's so green. it's almost salty on the side of my tongue. Whenever I
Mm.
taste that oil, I remember it from those batches. Sometimes I remember it from year to year. It's just so exceptional.
See, I think that there's that other element to a quality extra virgin olive oil like you have because it's family owned, but there's that ingredient of love that goes into it. And so I think you're, without getting too spiritual, but I think your father is looking out and over it. I remember we were in Boston and you showed me this picture of you and your father,
Thank you.
on the farm. And it was just so touching to me to see that pride, just the look in your eyes, in his eyes. I think that really makes a difference, right?
Yeah, we did share this passion. It took me at least 2 or 3 years to convince him to get into the business because he was an engineer
Oh,
and he was a civil engineer, so he built airports, highways, big buildings.
oh,
But of course, the farm had been in our family for over 250 years. We've been in Menfi since the 1770s. And so when my grandfather sort of handed over the farm to my father was just, flying back and forth from Rome to Sicily, but started, doing changes, agricultural changes to the
mm,
farm so
mm,
that it could be, go from old, tradition into modern
wow,
age, but
yeah.
always having a great love for what is natural. So in fact, the trees at our farm are left in what is called a free pruning. They're like as free as they can be, but of
Oh,
course respecting, the laws of
right.
of pruning an olive tree. And so he had a great respect for nature. But
Oh,
being a rational engineer, he was very worried about going into an olive oil business, especially because back in the late 80s and early 90s, the wine business hadn't developed yet in Sicily.
mhm.
So, there was no market. Sicily didn't really have a place on the map. It was just a matter of years. But then we won the first olive oil competition, and we became the first Sicilian olive oil to ever win
I'm gonna get more
an
champagne
olive
for.
oil competition. Then we were named best olive oil in the world. Then we started getting all these awards. So he got really encouraged and sort of started supporting me a little bit more. And then by then the olive oil business had taken off, uh, not only for us, but for other producers as
Right.
well.
I think
And
that's a point of pride then, to that affirmation when you start to win the awards. But are the growers there your employees, or is it a co-op, or how does it get harvested?
well, we just work with our own We have our own olive press, and we're very careful and selective because we decided to make a very special product again because of that
Mm,
love for nature and respect
right.
for nature. So we decided we pick our own olives
Wow.
and grow our quantities by choosing and selecting nearby producers who still have a sort of old-fashioned way of growing. We're still in a highly agricultural area, the Menfi area. It's now called the Menfi Shire because of its vineyards and olive
Oh,
groves. So
oh.
we look for people who work with our same philosophy and love for olive
See,
oil.
I know we must be in simpatico. My father was an engineer also, but a natural, so they have that balance of things. But did you, as a businesswoman, whether you were, a broadcaster and then going into your family business, especially at that time, when there was so much transition in the olive oil business itself, did you find it more of a challenge as a woman, or just that wasn't a concern for you?
I think my father missed not having a son, especially because he was the very last of like 13 generations. So we were really brought up to do everything and
Yeah.
to be really independent and just face it. So I also was, I think, lucky to grow up at a time of change.
Yeah.
And I just sort of fitted myself in, and I never really took any notice that I was not a woman, and I fitted into that man's world because it is a man's world in Sicily. Even though there are more and more women who work in agriculture, because it's sort of what the men leave out because it's just not so profitable.
It's so true. I don't know, so much obviously, but here in the States, it's also more women getting back into it and more people of, different cultures, here, whether it's, African Americans or Asian Americans, but people are more celebrating the diversity, of horticulture and the empowerment that it gives to people to grow their own food and to take charge of their health. So a lot of people with olive oil, they don't realize that it's healthy. Sometimes when people say to me, but it costs more, I say, I know, but you're putting it into your body. And plus the taste, it can enhance everything. So I think
Yeah.
there's a little bit of, transition going on here also. But, with your successful career, how, so many people and a lot of women also because of the pandemic, have found that working from home works for them, or they want to get into the food business because it's something they relate to. Is there any pearls of wisdom that you might suggest to them if they're thinking about getting into the food business?
Well, I love the food business, and I think as an Italian, food is everything to us. It's the way that we entertain, the way we share time with friends, and especially in Sicily. I mean, cooking is really everything. It's a way of sharing, and
It
we
is.
always cook at home. And having seasonal ingredients is like at the base of everything we do. And of course, olive oil brings so much to the food. And it's not just having a drizzle; it's actually letting your ingredients take up that oil. Sometimes I made a very, I saw somebody, friends cooking a very famous Sicilian pasta, which is pasta with broccoli and tegame, which is with cauliflower. And cauliflower can be quite dry and stiff. And this pasta actually takes in a lot of olive oil, which
Oh,
you
wow.
may think it's too much, but it's actually what makes it really flavorful. And again, there we go to quality oil. If the oil is good quality, it will add taste and flavor to your food, to your ingredients. If not, of course, it's just going to do the contrary. For example, when I make a pizza, when I lived in London, I didn't have access to all the olive oil I do today, and just my tiny little bottle. So I would either make pizza and put a cheap olive oil on the bottom of the pan before I stretched out my pizza, and then use my good olive oil just to top it.
Oh,
And
okay.
then my pizza dough tasted horrible, and at first I couldn't understand why. And then I realized that it actually absorbed the flavor of that bad
Oh,
quality olive oil. Same thing when we fry eggplant. There's a lot of fried eggplant in Sicilian food, and it would start in a month or so. And again, frying with good olive oil just makes a hell of a difference. So, but
completely.
the other issue that is very important that you mentioned earlier is that quality is taste and flavor on our food, but it's also health, because a
Yes.
quality olive oil, like our oil, we've had it tasted recently for its level of polyphenols. Polyphenols are actually the antioxidants in olive oil. And the higher the quality of an olive oil, the higher the level of vitamin E and vitamin A, of monounsaturated fatty acids that, as you know, are so good for,
They
heart,
are.
again, fighting heart diseases. And, every day I open um, the olive oil times, there's some new research against dementia, against this and that.
Right.
It's true that it's not only olive oil that is going to help, but it's certainly the higher quality, the higher all those nutritional values and vitamins. And we just had our oil tested, and we are going to work on shelf life to see how long it will keep its levels of vitamin E, which my father had told me our oil had very high levels of vitamin E, but then somehow I had never done that sort of vitamin analysis, and now I have, and I've been told by the lab, they said, hey, Natalia, look, you should do something about this, because I can actually apply, the Czech consortium told me I can actually apply a seal for that. And
See,
that
your
would be
your
really great.
father's engineering, but he's looking at the elements to see. But I
Yeah,
know
it's
here in the
big,
States, they're,
big.
always talking about the Mediterranean diet and how good it is for you. So much of it is plant-based, and, to have the olive oil is such a key ingredient. And when you think about it, that's, I know here in the States, I don't know in Europe, but we have very aggressive, healthcare. It's like testing, testing, testing. But if you do the preventive and eat and drink healthy, then you're already ahead of the game. So it's very cost effective when you think about it, in those
It
terms,
is. If you
right?
look at it that way, it certainly is.
Right.
But you see, like these little tomatoes, I love our sea salt. I would like you to go through our sea salt because we're so keen
Oh,
about
yeah,
it.
I wanted to ask you
It's
about
the
that.
salt from the salt pans of Marsala, which is about 30 kilometers, like 45
Okay.
miles from us.
Okay.
And it's a natural sea salt made by natural evaporation. So you need very little. It's actually very sweet and mild. I mean, it's strange to say that salt is sweet, but it's very round. And if I add just a tiny bit, just a tiny, tiny bit to these tomatoes, and add a bit of olive oil, like nice green and grassy, like the old grove, that tomato salad is done. I can add some of our masala vinegar, but sometimes I never even add that.
How
Masala
did you
vinegar
get
is,
how did you get into the salt end of it? How did you?
oh, because one of my main concerns has always been communicating our product, because we were tiny and we could not afford, big
Big ad
promotional
budgets?
campaigns. I
Yeah.
just talked and talked about my olive oil. And back in the early 90s, I realized that people didn't know how to taste olive oil. They didn't know what quality olive oil was about. They didn't know how to cook with it. So I remember in one of my first olive oil tastings at Selfridges in London, this woman approached me and she said, "Ah, is that olive oil?" And I said, "Yes." I was like in my 20s. And she said, "Oh, I've heard it's very healthy. And but where else can I use it besides my salads?" And I said, "Well, you eat boiled potatoes? That's something that, all English uh, people would eat." And she said, "Yes, of course, every day." And I said, "Well, just use a pinch of sea salt and olive oil and you'll see they're delicious." And so I set up cooking classes in Menfi when I
Oh,
then moved to Sicily.
I
And
see.
I've traveled a lot with my cooking classes. Then I wrote my cookbook. And I'm very, I focus on very simple things. Like, this has to become like a gourmet dish. It's just chopped tomato, but with
It
a bit of
is.
sea salt and olive oil. It will turn into something really delicious.
Oh, Natalia, it's so elegant, so elegant. Can you show the audience your cookbook that you have?
Oh,
Or,
yeah, sure.
yeah.
It's out of print. If any of you are publishers and would like to reprint it, it's all based at our farm. It's a book through the seasons of Sicily at the farm.
I think
All
it's I think it's fantastic, and I'm gonna advocate here. So we're gonna like maybe have a write-in vote or something, so that we
you
can
see,
get
it's
it.
us. It's all shot in our kitchen in the house, in the farmhouse in Menfi.
Oh,
For example, these are eggplant rolls with white sauce with tomatoes. It's one of the most delicious summer dishes. Look at that. And it's everything with olive oil. These are sardine rolls with breadcrumb and pine nuts. And I'll
I
show you my very, very favorite dish,
yes,
which is
please.
what I always do in cooking classes, is a sheared egg cooked in olive oil. There's nothing tastier than that.
I love sardines. My husband Bill is a little reticent to try, but I love
I
them.
know, it's a bit of an acquired taste. I can fully
Fine.
understand. Not having grown up in Sicily, it took me a while, but I can't find my egg right now. It's because I'm looking for it. But
But
anyway,
you have such good fish there, so it's a little bit
the fish
different.
is very fresh, so it's
Yes.
fish at night,
Yeah.
and right, we have very good fishmongers.
But
So I'll take you there when you come over.
but I love that you have the salt also, and then you showed me earlier that you have this mandarin orange infused.
Yes, so we have. So let's say this, that as a quality producers, all this thing about flavored oils is something that you really keep away from.
Yeah.
But at one point, one of my importers said, "Look, you have those beautiful lemons at the farm because we have a few hectares of lemons, And they said, but why don't you produce an olive oil with lemons? They're all such bad quality. And so, my father never actually tasted it. He thought it
Oh.
was like crap to do. But in fact, we just won the Great Taste Awards, which is a very competitive competition in the UK. And our lemon is not this one, it's this one. Our lemon oil is produced with a single variety olive, Biancolilla, which is very mild, slightly peppery, and with a beautiful, delicate grassy nose. And we extract, that means press the Biancolilla with lemons from the farm. And the oil is absolutely delicious, I
Oh.
assure you. And again, it's beautiful mixed with, where is my vinegar? With the vinegar. The vinegar is produced in Marsala, Marsala wines. They're very
Right.
sweet. It's very aromatic and mild and round. And so the three, they just combine, just like heavenly. And in recent years, I developed also another oil with mandarins. So think orange, so think lamb, think duck,
Duck.
uh,
Yeah, I love that.
tomatoes. Because then sometimes, you just get so much feedback from people who tried. On a tomato salad, it's just like amazing because on tomatoes, sun-dried tomatoes, on mozzarella. It's like
What's
you think it's less accessible than the lemon, but it actually goes on everything as well. And just to go through, this is Natalia's selection. It's our only single variety oil. This when we did the
Oh,
two-week
that's what I
selection.
used to get all the time. Yeah, at Sickles. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. You can get this online if you like.
Okay.
So this is Natalia's selection. It won several awards at the NYIOOC. And this, I'm sorry, I don't have the big label. I run out. Where is it? This is our main label. Here it is. It's a dark green label. This is the classic Ravida label. If you go online on our website, www.ravida.it, you can see it. And we have the 750 bottle, which I'm sorry not to have here because it's such a beautiful bottle. And so the characteristic of our oil, which I haven't said yet, is that it's a natural blend of three Sicilian varieties. What I mean by that is that in that old olive grove that I was talking about earlier, we found that there were three Sicilian varieties. So mainly the Biancolilla, which produces a mild, very delicate, grassy olive oil. And then there were plants of Cerasuola. Cerasuola produces a very sturdy oil, very
Yeah. I just a little bit like we're losing some audio, so I may have to ask you to repeat that part. But um, I'm seeing it's a little bit challenging, obviously, because we're from Italy to here. So it'll come back in a minute, I'm sure. And but while Natalia is describing this, and maybe we go back to it in a second when her audio comes back on, but if you can't find Ravida in your local stores, I want to encourage you all to go into. Oh, we're all freezing. Oh, geez. Oh, there it goes. We're back. That you can order online, so it's very easy. So I'm gonna put up Natalia. She has her Instagram, which is fabulous, and she has Facebook, that you can see. So you can sign up for all of that. And so I think we're losing Natalia here, but well, we're almost at that mark, so I can see where. I thank Natalia so much. I was going to do a lightning round with her. If we get her back, I'll bring her back on. I was going to ask her her favorite food that she prepares and what season and what time is most fun to go to Sicily. But I feel blessed that we were able to get her for this amount of time. So I'm going to say arrivederci, con affetto. Molte grazie.
Incoming video call.
Okay. I don't know. Just accept it, I guess.
Me?
Yeah. So, okay. Then we're gonna.
What happened?
Okay. So I can see that it came to an end. So we're gonna say, okay, goodbye.